Okay, now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's get to the interesting part, the abilities. It should be noted that if you have a certain playstyle, you should have gear that fits that certain playstyle. If you're someone who loves to keep your distance by dishing out bombs, try Sub Saver Up or Ink Saver Sub. Or maybe you're the kind of guy who really loves to use specials to get easy splats. Then trying Special Power Up and Special Charge Up would be better for you. I won't go over in detail about what each ability does, since most of the time, the name alone is enough to get the idea. But something that isn't so well known is that there are different kinds of abilities. There are the regular abilities, which can be found on the main or rolled into the sub piece of a gear. For example, Special Saver and Ink Resistance can be found on the main or sub abilities. And then there are the unique abilities that can only be found on the main. That means abilities like Tenacity and Drop Roller cannot be rolled onto any gear by leveling them up. It must be on the gear once purchased or ordered. Another feature of the unique abilities is that each one is bound to a certain type of gear. For example, the ability Comeback is only found on the headgear, while Stealth Jump is only found on footwear. This is done to make sure you cannot stack the same or similar abilities. I'll give a more in-depth example. So you could run a gear set with Opening Gambit, Haunt, and Object Shredder since each is from a different category. But you cannot have 2 or 3 of the same unique abilities with the same gear category. So you'll never see a loadout with Respawn Punisher and Ninja Squid since both are from clothing. In general, the clothing and abilities that people wear in Splatoon 2 is very diverse, but sometimes you'll see some people wear a lot of specific brands. This is done because there's a direct relationship between the brand of a piece of gear and the sub-abilities that it tends to roll. While playing, you may have had a time where all 3 slots that were rolled onto a piece of gear were the exact same. That was most likely because it had a certain brand tied to it, and that certain brand had a greater chance to roll a specific sub-ability. The game will only tell you this if you look in very obscure places though. But to save you the trouble, I made a table that will be very beneficial to you moving forward. This table shows what gear brands have a high chance to roll a certain sub-ability. As well as there being an ability to be rolled more often onto a sub-slot, there's also an ability that is uncommonly rolled onto a certain sub-slot. The common ability will be 5 times more likely to be rolled than normal, and the uncommon will bring your chance to half the time. Let me show you some examples so you guys can get the picture better. For this first example, the shirt has the brand Forge. According to the table, Forge has a higher chance for you to get Special Power Up, but a lower chance for you to get Sub Saver. And for this next example, the brand is Tenatech. And according to the table, the brand Tenatech has a high chance of you getting Ink Recovery Up, but a low chance of you getting Quick Super Jump. Now the examples I just showed you weren't filled in, so you'd have to unlock them themselves. Now let me show you some examples of some ones that are already 3-slotted. This example has the brand Squid Force. Squid Force has a high chance of you getting Ink Resistance Up, but a low chance of you getting Ink Saver Main. And for this example, the brand tied to this piece of gear is Splash Mob. Splash Mob has a high chance of you getting Ink Saver Main, but a low chance of you getting Run Speed Up. Now for those of you who may be wondering how some people may get gear with all of the same ability, or maybe abilities that don't exactly match up with the brand, that's still completely possible. And I'll show you some examples here. This shirt is the brand Squid Force, but yet you can see it has 3 subs of Ink Recovery Up. Yet, the brand says it should have a higher chance of getting Ink Resistance Up and a low chance of getting Ink Saver Main. This shirt went against the rule. And in this next example, this brand is Tenatech. But even though the brand is Tenatech, the 3 sub-abilities on the gear are Run Speed Up. So again, it completely neglects the rule. Now let me go for a specific example that doesn't apply to these. This headpiece, as you can see, has the main ability for Run Speed and 3 subs of Run Speed. You're probably wondering, what's so special about this piece of gear? It just was one of the ones that didn't follow the pattern. Well, if you remember from the table, Grizzco, Squid Force, and Amiibo gear all have no distinctive brand tied to them. So there is no higher chance of rolling a certain ability, and there is no lower chance of rolling a certain ability. It'll be fair playing ground for every single ability on which one you're going to roll or not. You can also just skip the unlocking process by re-rolling your sub-slots on a piece of gear. You can do this by giving Merch 1 Super C-Snail, and he will essentially turn the system into a sort of slot machine. Brand influence is still in full effect though, so re-rolling is still pretty similar to unlocking gear. Every time you scrub your gear or re-roll it, you earn chunks depending on what abilities are on the gear. Ability chunks are smaller fragments of sub-abilities that can be combined with one another in order to fill an empty slot or rolled sub-ability. Chunks can only be earned for regular abilities and can only be installed onto a sub-ability. They can be earned primarily from scrubbing gear. For this example, we're going to add 3 different sub-abilities using chunks. The first slot, you'll need 10 chunks of run speed. The second slot, you'll need 10 chunks of quick super jump. And for the third slot, you'll need 10 chunks of ink recovery up, making it a total of 10 chunks for each different sub-ability that you want. It should be noted though, when adding chunks, the main ability and brand have no influence at all. So the brand or the main ability will not increase or decrease the amount of chunks needed. In this example, this girl did exactly that. And for each piece of gear, she used 10 chunks of the respective ability and spread them throughout. So in total, she used 30 chunks of swim speed, 30 chunks of ink recovery up, and 30 chunks of sub saver. Alright, so instead of having 3 different abilities, let's have 3 of the same. The first slot, as usual, will only require 10 chunks. But once we get to the second slot, you'll see that it doubles, increasing to 20 chunks. And finally, for the third slot, it'll increase to 30 whole chunks, making it a grand total of 60 chunks. Which way most of the time, you see people that have gear with pure abilities on it,